Welcome to this week's episode of Where's the Manual with Nadiah, Latif and Jessy Chahal. This week our topic is No-Fly Zones, as we discuss topics that maybe your children don't want to talk to you about. So today we don't have one, we don't have two, but we have four amazing youth advocates from the SS3 Creative Hub, representing three different NGOs and social enterprises.
Hi, I'm Nadiah.
Hi, I'm Fong.
Hi, I'm Catherine.
And I'm Harpooja. So today we're going to be discussing all about things that you may want to know as a parent, but they don't really want to share. That's right, let's get right into it. This is Where's the Manual, No-Fly Zone, episode number 7, coming to you live from the SS3 Creative Hub in Jaya. So guys, when we talk about no-fly zones, what are some of the topics that you just don't want to talk to your parents about, or at least you're not comfortable talking to them about?
Sex, yeah, exactly. Sex, love and relationships.
Yes.
Trending memes. Because they will not understand it's a single piece of it.
Defining success, I guess, what it is.
Privacy.
So alright, for me, personally, when I talk about success and everything, I feel like primarily mostly Asian households, they will have this ultimatum of what success is. Big house, multiple cars, fine jewelry and everything. But that was, I think, parents kind of project their ideas of what success is, because maybe back in the day they didn't have as many opportunities to become their idea of success, therefore projecting it onto the younger generation. But now, in a day and age when everybody is just has their own different paths in life, some may want to be artists, writers, maybe architects or whatnot, and necessarily jobs that don't pay as much, that is not defined as successful,
Do you find that parents still think that more pay means more successful?
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. What do you call that? Let's say if a child were to come and say, "Hey mom, I want to be a photographer one day," and the parents might be like, "Yeah, sure, it's great," but then they will try and divert the child away and let's do more maths, let's go more into accounting, business.
So it's a good hobby, right?
Right.
Yes.
More often than not, as a diversion tactic, I believe most parents would say if your passion overtakes your career, then it's fine,
See, that's what I don't want to talk about, salary, because they associate that with success. And also on top of that, they kind of start judging you, and the respect changes because of the money you're getting, not because of how you've grown as an individual. So it's all materialistic in every sense, and I don't think I want to discuss my salary with my family.
But I think for me, more than success, I think it is excellence, It's not just material success, wealth and whatnot, but I think it's also excellence. Like what you said about going for a job that you love and going for a job that pays. I think what they want is the expectation that you're excellent in everything, meaning you get a job which you love, but you also get paid, and you also have good values, and you also have this, have that. So you gotta be a complete package.
I think that has been around since time immemorial. It hasn't been something that's new, that's moved with the times. I mean, Jessy and I would probably be able to agree that even when we were younger, it was the same expectations. Do you think that, from maybe your thoughts, do you think it comes from a place where parents just want the best, or your best interests at heart?
Sometimes it will clash for some circumstances, but I do think the most important is still you have interest in the industry you are pursuing, because when you are doing the job, you will try to make it to perfection. But if you are forced to do something that is not in your league, you will just complete the job and maybe just get the job done and then not perfecting it well.
Right, but I just wanted to say, we've been so far discussing how parents are sort of not understanding, but I must have, also say that there are many parents out there who have been very supportive and who have short of hand-holding, who've always been tell me your problems, I'd like to talk to you, and yet find that their young
Correct.
teenage or young adult children, sort of shut them out. And I think that's also quite difficult from a parent's point of view, given we've grown up in different generations, given that you have more exposure now and you guys are a lot more empowered and you know so much more better. But what can be done to sort of, bridge that gap between the willing parent and the unwilling child?
Yeah.
I think more often than not, when a child is not responsive to a parent's understanding or whatnot, I do think sometimes, or more times than it is, a child feels that the parent is too overbearing, that they're always like, oh, I'm here, and the child's like, let me have space, and I'll tell you what I want when we get there. If I have a problem, I know you're there.
What is that space like? How do we put into perspective what that space is like for the very clueless parent out there? Tell me, what is this space?
I'm writing notes.
I think it has to do a lot with communication.
Yeah.
It's like, if for so many years I keep to myself, you keep to yourself, and I learned to have this space, this wall, and then suddenly you're like, I'm here for you, you can talk to me, you can talk to me. I'll be confused. How do I say it? How do I say it?
And suspicious.
Yeah. And also, like, for me, in my case, I can see the relationship between my grandmother and my mother and me. It's like worlds apart. So I don't know. Although, my mother, for example, she is the kind of parent you said who's willing to listen, to understand. But then there's also that cultural aspect that she grew up with, so she's
And
also
her
learning-
expectations and how she's been brought up, so she views things differently from you.
So she's also learning and I'm also learning, and sometimes we're just like, how do I get this
Bridge the
across?
gap, right?
How do you bridge the
I
gap?
think it's like a process because that's how I understand things, and I completely understand what you're saying, the cultural gap, and even if the parents are willing to like adapt to our culture and we meeting halfway, I think it's like a process where it's all about communication, right? So they come to you and they lay it out in front of you and be like, okay, so I see this is what's happening and I'm happy to talk to you about it, and give that control to us. So instead of like taking power from us and we being vulnerable and then resenting that, it's like pleasing people as well on some level. So instead of giving that power, so they create the environment and be like, I'm open to discuss this with you whenever you're ready.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, and also that parents need to be reminded that we are also evolving.
Yeah.
And we need to evolve with our child through their different phases as well.
Yeah.
From you're the only guy here, so I'm looking at a guy's perspective. That's right. Is it more difficult for a guy, for a young man to express himself and talk to his parents about things like sex and dating and relationship problems and ambition and failure and whatnot?
To me as a guy, I'm quite open-minded about all this stuff. So for me, I can probably express any of these things to my parents. But sometimes when they want to understand us, but at the same time we don't want to worry them too.
You were talking about the challenges of finding that, I suppose, balance of tangoing how much I want to share and how much I should be sharing to my parents. And what Jessy and I have discovered in the last few weeks, at least talking to different parents, in fact we spoke to an eminent leader recently, and even he said that the intergenerational parenting style is a big thing. He said, I didn't have a loving relationship with my parents. I knew they loved me, but more than anything I feared them. And it was more about discipline, it was more about rules, and it has to be followed. And if my dad came back from work, I'd better be doing something because I'll be in trouble. Whereas parents today are talking about how do I become their friend? How do I create that open relationship?
How do they go out
buddies,
for coffee or
right?
hang out together,
Correct.
or catch a movie together?
So I think you're right in the sense that parents try and project what they feel they didn't get when they were younger. So the same way they want you to be more successful or just as successful as they hope they would be.
They want to open up that connection
They
that
want-
they didn't have.
Correct. Perhaps they want that relationship that they didn't have with their parents. But specifically to MCO, and I wanted to ask this to Fumi and Catherine, with more FaceTime with your parents, do you feel that it's a little awkward? Because we get couples saying, you're in my face now, I don't know how to behave as a married couple. Do you have, perhaps friends telling you, it's really awkward now, mom's always around, she's asking me 20,000 things.
Yeah, to me, I think it's it must be very awkward lah sometimes because they think it's the best for us to follow their footsteps to achieve success like what Puja said. But sometimes I have my own way of doing things, and then they will kind of get annoyed for us doing some certain thing they don't want. Like my desk is super messy, and that's the saddest thing that they think about. Yeah, creativity also. Yeah.
For me, I'd like to touch on my relationship with my dad. So he was in the Air Force before I was born, and so because of that, he was just flying around throughout most of my childhood, you know. And he came back home, retired when I was 14. So he came back to a teenager, a rebellious teenager, and he is a military man. So
This sounds like an interesting story.
it was interesting. It still is interesting, but the MCO in a way forced us to just stay at home and look at each other and talk to each other. So I realized that the only way I was able to connect with him is to find out what he likes. And I know one thing that has a soft spot for him is movies related to war and aircrafts and stuff. So we started watching movies together, and that became a thing. And I realized that in the end, it's not really that hard. You just have to be open, and it has to come from both ends. You know, it has to come from me, and it also has to come from them, both parents. And
Well said. Yeah, exactly. I love that, and that really brings down to the point of why we want to talk about where's the manual, because the reality of it is when you have a child, well, that beautiful bundle of joy does not come with a manual on how you're going to raise this human being into an amazing person. And very often parents, as Jessy and I have seen, are just winging it. We're hoping that whatever we're doing works. So as one of the last questions we wanted to ask you is, what do you think are some of the things both parents and children can do to kind of bridge that gap and have a more open relationship?
I recently came across this book called as The 5 Love Languages, and that's the author Gary Chapman. He's written books for like every group of people, like parents, relation, like marriage and teenagers and children. And in terms of parents, everyone speaks differently. So you could like quality time, you could like words of affirmation. So if the parent learns what the child likes, they can speak that language, and the hesitation from, like as Fong said, like he works in a different way, which his parents are not seeing because his parents' language is completely different. So if they actually understand that his language is, you know, leave time for himself, and then he'll come and like he'll share his knowledge or his experience. So it's like respecting each other, and then he'll start respecting them, and then they'll start to get to know each other on that friendly adult
I
level.
think a lot of the time, like respect, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time, because parents, right, when they grow up, they, like you said earlier, the prominent figure, he feared his parents and everything. Likewise, like our parents feared their parents, and now they grew up respecting and everything, and that I don't think that respect was given back to them. Therefore, now we're automatically asked to just respect without receiving it, and it goes.
But it's also like for them, respect is fear, not respect is respect.
It's exactly.
So
and I think
that's what we are not understanding,
Yes.
because as you said, we respect
Different
him and
languages of love.
respect exactly.
Exactly. So like respecting would be like being polite,
Yeah.
or debating or whatnot, not arguing. Like I think disrespect in our sense would be like yelling and shouting and storming out of the house and like cursing at them.
But that's okay with them as well, because that's what they did. So when you react like that, they will be like, oh, she'll come back. You know, that's okay. That's a normal behavior because I did that. My siblings did that.
However, now I think because times are changing so much, I feel like respect should be a two-way street
Yeah,
at
of
this
course.
point. And it should be something that's very common, but because we're still in an Asian society, right? Respect is only a one-way street. Like I have to listen to you, but you don't listen to me. And you do, but you think what is best for me may not. I may know it's not best for me. You know what I mean? Like let's say, like Fong said just now, like I have a certain way of doing things and everything. But my parents will be like, okay, there's a set way because that is how I did things.
Yeah.
You know? So maybe, okay, let's take a dishwasher for example. Back in the day, they washed dishes by hand, and now we have a dishwasher. But they would say, oh, you're being lazy for using dishwasher.
But there's a
you know?
dishwasher, okay, but dishwashers don't really get it as clean as you would
Yeah.
using your hands. But hey, I'm intergenerational.
It was an example, you know. So things are improving, and therefore
Yeah.
our techniques as a generation would improve. And I think parents are still stuck on their era instead of bringing it forward into now
Yeah.
2020.
But
you
it's
know?
fascinating, isn't it? Because Catherine's example is so different to all
Yeah.
the other three of
Yes,
ours.
yes.
Because hers is like more mature level, where she is also being an adult and observing her parent. Who taught her that? Like, you know, how did she know to do that?
My
And then
parents
actually
watching this would be like, matured? Huh?
Excuse me? Like, you know that?
Yeah.
Uncle, auntie,
interesting.
very mature. I'm very proud of each of your children here
Yes,
today, and that's why we wanted to have them in this conversation. I think super insightful. Yes, every family is different. Every
Yeah.
child, you know, with their mom or their dad, even within one household, may have a different kind of sort of, you know, an approach to one parent, that closeness. But what I'm picking up really is that the effort needs to come from both
Yeah.
sides,
Yes.
and times are changing. So while the young adult also needs to understand fundamentally what your parent has grown, what setting your parent has grown up in, what trauma your parent has gone
Yeah.
through. And as you
Yes.
pointed out, Nadiah, there's no manual as a young parent as well, you know.
Yes.
Besides just reading things that are out there and speaking to friends, I really have no other idea but just trial and error. Discussions here, but as recap, guys, what would your inputs be? You had something to share with us, Pooja.
Yeah, I had a small tip, alright, for the parents out there. It's what my parents actually do for me when I don't really like sharing things about myself. So what my parents used to do was they would come back and instead of asking how's your day, they would actually recap on their day first and say like, oh, I had a tough day, or this happened and that happened. And what do you think? What they will ask me for my input first, and then I would be like, oh, maybe instead of, you know, just don't mind them, or like I'll give my advice, and the conversation would flip on me, and then I would say like, oh, I struggled with this today, and I struggled with that, and then they would give their advice. So that is something that has helped me as an
Bless your
individual.
parents.
I
That's
know.
a very
Reciprocity, right?
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to so hi. So it goes back to sometimes you have to make the first move, and sometimes your parents will have to make the first move.
And it kind of meets in the middle, and by the end of that discussion, hopefully my parents feel better and I definitely feel better, and that is one way for parents to approach children that don't necessarily like to open up.
You know?
What about you, Ken?
I've actually been really, really blessed to have parents and a family that encourage child participation ever since I was young. You know, when I grew up as a child, right, when we had arguments between siblings, we had family meetings and we had to chair the meetings.
Yeah.
We had to chair the meetings. We had to bring everyone and we had to say, okay, I have a problem. My brother did this to me, and I did this to my brother. You know, so
We have a family tribunal.
yeah. So because of that, I think communication was easier for us because we talk, you know. And for me, I feel like the most important thing is just that, for you to have a comfortable space for you to talk. Like just recently, I can say it happily, proudly now that I was able to open up to my mother and talk about the issue of mental health. And that is one thing which I've been thinking about for so long, you know, and I feel it is very important because we need to talk about
Gonna
these
make me
things.
tear as a mother. I'm just like hoping in the future that my daughter will do that as well. Because yes, mental health is a big issue, and that one that goes, you know, just very much silent on parents' lips, especially because it's something that's not accepted. What will people say? What will the neighbors think?
Exactly.
So on and so
Yeah.
forth. Yeah.
Your turn.
Oh, it's my turn. Alright. So my takeaway from this is I think since we're all Asian and our parents will seem to be more concerned about our doings, and I think we should be very appreciative of their concern because they actually care for us. Although it may be a bit annoying and sometimes, but they are coming out of their true heart, and then they really mean everything that they concern, and we as a children or youth, we must really take that into account and appreciate their concern on us. Yeah.
Recap it for us.
Take it away, Nadiah.
I don't have a mother, so with my dad it's really difficult to connect. So I just respect or I appreciate whatever he does on whatever level I can. And if I don't like it, I try to communicate, but it's hard for him to understand because he doesn't understand. So we just we just keep it minimal. We keep it minimal where it shows that we're there for each other on whatever level, and we're still adults and living our own in our own worlds. So yeah.
I like the fact that I'm hearing a lot to do with understanding that everyone is trying. The same way you're uncomfortable in trying to either open up or some topics that you don't talk about, ranging from mental health to sex or sexual reproductive health. But this appreciation that it's actually quite difficult both sides. And you also said something beautiful. You said focusing on the language of love. You said understanding that especially for families with single parents, it's even tougher if there's that gender difference, perhaps that trying to figure out what my young adolescent daughter might need. And we're going to have another session on this. On how do I bridge that, the way men speak and the way women speak are also very different. I love her, but how do I show that? And at the same time, that need to bridge. So thank you so much, guys. This is amazing. And I've learned so much from all of you. So it's hopeful because then I know in the future we're going to have more amazing parents, hopefully, if you choose to have children. Future generation of parents.
I also want to say, thank you, Nadiah. Thank you, Jessy. Thank you to our parents, my parents, our parents, and all the parents because I don't know, just talking about this makes me so emotional.
Okay, now we're gonna send WhatsApp to our parents. Love you.
I think ultimately what I'm hearing is that we don't want to disappoint our parents, and they as parents don't want to disappoint us as well. And I think having said that, with that on the table, mutual respect on the table, open communication on the table, and what you're saying, Fong, it's okay lah, just indulge them a little bit,
Give face lah.
I think all of that really kind of sort of forms the manual for this conversation.
That's right, definitely.
Well, that's it from all of us right here at the SS3 Creative Hub. I'm on a rocking horse, and this is in fact 30 years old.
It's right, we've re-gentrified it, so don't throw away stuff. When it's broken, sometimes it's a good opportunity to fix it and give it more love.
And if you're a parent with toys to give away, with books to give away, with anything you don't need in the house any longer, please bring it down to the SS3 Creative Hub here in PJ. It's also the toy library where children of all ages will come and learn and grow and develop and also form good communication and relationship skills.
Correct.
And play!
Correct. So it's a place where parents can get their work done and children and adults can play together. So that's all from us this episode. Bye!
Bye.
Make memories, guys!
Yay.